Welcome to Get Your FRQ On. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to calculate definite integrals on your graphing calculator. First thing you're going to need to do is input your function that you want to integrate into y equals, or at least that will make it perhaps easier later on. You don't technically have to do that, but you will need to enter it at some point. So in order to calculate definite integrals on a graphing calculator, there's typically going to be a few different ways you can do this. One way is to just do it from the graph. So if I go to the graph, here is a function that I have graphed, and let's say I want to calculate the integral from 0 to 2 here. This is 2 right here. This window goes from 0 to 3. The tick marks are 1/2. So let's say I wanted to integrate from 0 to 2. From the graph, I'm looking for second calc. So I'm going to use those two buttons. Second calc, and the integral here, if you're familiar with the notation for integrals, that would be 7 down here. And then I'm just going to enter in my lower limit. My lower limit I said I wanted to be 0. My upper limit I wanted to be 2. And then notice that it actually does shade the area under that curve. So for this function that I have defined in y equals, the integral from 0 to 2 is approximately 10.419327. Now, on the AP Calculus exam, it's important to understand that the value you get if you integrate from the graph is less precise than the value you get if you just use the calculator's integral command, which I'm going to show you next. All right, so I'm going to exit out of here, second quit. If I go to math, one of the math commands that I can use here is to just do the integral. Math all the way down here. I'm looking for function integral, which is number 9. And then notice it gives me the notation here. My lower limit was 0. Use my arrows to go to my upper limit of 2. And then if you entered in your function into y equals, you can just go to variables, y variables, function y1. And then make sure you include the x in dx if you're integrating with respect to x. If you're doing like polar graphs, you might have to do theta or something like that. I'm just doing x here. All right, and then I'm going to hit enter, and I get this value, which the calculator is going to calculate a little bit more precisely than it will on the graph. You might not notice a difference, but there's going to be times when it is more precise, and you're going to want to do that. Now, if you didn't enter your function into y1 first, or whatever y function you have it stored in, you could enter it manually when you get to this space in here to fill in, but you will have to enter it at some point. The reason I typically will do it in my y equals editor is if I enter it here, once I'm done with it, I don't have access to it anymore. If I enter it into y equals, I can use that function to do a bunch of other things with, which on the AP Calculus exam for a free response question, there's a good chance you're going to have to use a function for a couple of different things. So I always put it in y equals so that I only have to enter it once.